morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're watching or listening. My name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. Today's lecture, ladies and gentlemen, will be another installation into our Anti-Federalist Papers series going on number 37. So if you haven't gone back and watched 1 through 36, I would highly encourage you to do so, because understanding the Anti-Federalist Papers, in addition to the Federalist Papers, will provide you a very well-rounded, advantageous understanding of the U.S. Constitution, and understanding the U.S. Constitution will absolutely be necessary if you intend to combat any sort of lawfare waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So let's go ahead and jump on over to the Anti-Federalist Papers. There are multiple institutions from which you can get a paper and digital copy of the Anti-Federalist Papers. Go ahead and get both. While you're out there looking, if you haven't already, go ahead and get a paper and digital copy of the Federalist Papers so you can join us in comparing and contrasting the arguments for and against ratifying the U.S. Constitution. Excellent. So number 37 is titled Factions and the Constitution. Here's what he has to say. Notice it doesn't have an author. Sometimes it happens, well, either because they used a pseudonym, they didn't include the name, or if you look back to number 36, this one's probably going to be written by Mr. Patrick Henry Lee, I believe his name was. So, anyway, focus on what he has to say. Let's see what he has to say. He says this. To have a just idea of the government before us, and to show that a consolidated one is the object in view, it is necessary not only to examine the plan, but also its history and the politics of its particular friends. The Confederation was formed when great confidence was placed in the voluntary exertions of individuals and of the respective states, and the framers of it, to guard against usurpation, so limited and checked the powers that in many respects they are inadequate to the exigencies of the Union. We find, therefore, members of Congress urging alterations in the federal system almost as soon as it was adopted. It was early proposed to vest Congress with powers to levy an impost, to regulate trade, etc., but such was known to be the caution of the states in parting with power, that the vestment even of these was proposed to be under several checks and limitations. So he's saying, we understand that the Articles of the Confederation were weak. They were weak by design. During the war, the general confusion and the introduction of paper money infused in the minds of the people vague ideas respecting government and credit. We expected too much from the return of peace, and of course we have been disappointed. Our governments have been new and unsettled, and several legislatures, by making tender, suspension, and paper money laws, have given just cause of uneasiness to creditors. By these and other causes, several orders of men in the community have been prepared by degrees for a change of government. And this very abuse of power in the legislatures, which in some cases has been charged upon the democratic part of the community, has furnished aristocratical men with those very weapons and those very means with which, in great measure, they are rapidly effecting their favorite object. And should an oppressive government be the consequence of the proposed change, posterity may reproach not only a few overbearing, unprincipled men, but those parties in the states which have misused their powers. That's why the Articles were so weak. It wasn't to create a bad government, but because a powerful government is the bad government. We know that for a fact, because as we see in the weak government, the intentionally designed weak government, these aristocratical men are still vying for the reins of power. So put as many limitations, as many checks as possible, as a contingency upon an already weak, ineffective, well, not ineffective, inefficient, lethargic, that's a good word, lethargic government, that being the government from the Articles of the Confederation. I digress. Back to him. The conduct of several legislatures touching paper money and tender laws has prepared many honest men for changes in government, which otherwise they would not have thought of, when by the evils on the one hand and by the secret instigations of artful men on the other, the minds of men were become sufficiently uneasy. A bold step was taken, which is usually followed by a revolution or a civil war. I wonder if either of those happen. A general convention for mere commercial purposes was moved, for the authors of this measure saw that the people's attention was turned solely to the amendment of the federal system, and that had the idea of a total change been started, probably no state would have appointed members to the convention. That's an important fact to remember. The idea of destroying ultimately the state government and forming one consolidated system could not have been admitted. A convention, therefore, merely for vesting in Congress power to regulate trade was proposed. It was done under guile. It was not an honest convention. So when Madison was saying in the Federalist Papers, I think it was in the 40s, Federalist Papers in the 40s of the Federalist Papers, he was arguing about whether the convention was legitimate or not. There's your rebuttal. The convention was called to make an amendment, not a total change, not a complete reformation of the standing government. Because they knew, the Federalists, a misnomer, by the way, the Federalists knew if they proposed the idea to the states to get rid of the state governments, which is ultimately what the U.S. Constitution did, aimed to do, even though the Federalists didn't want to admit it, the convention never would have had delegates appointed to it. That's why barely over half of the delegates, well, no, it was 55 delegates showed up. Never mind. It's why they couldn't even get all 70 of the delegates to show up. Again, I digress. I'm probably going to do that very often in the Anti-Federalist Papers because they basically prophesied all the tyrannies that we experience today. So it's so gut-wrenching and so infuriating because they were saying this in 1787. These lessons could have been obeyed. These warnings could have been listened to, but hubris blinds and deafens many. This was pleasing to the commercial towns, and the landed people had little or no concern about it. In September 1786, a few men from the Middle States met at Annapolis and hastily proposed a convention to be held in May 1787 for the purpose, generally, of amending the Confederation. This was done before the delegates of Massachusetts and of the other states arrived. Still, not a word was said about destroying the old Constitution and making a new one. Go ahead and recall what the Federalists were saying in rebuttal to that concern. Oh, don't worry about it. It's just an amendment. The powers in the U.S. Constitution were the ones already granted in the Articles of the Confederation. We're just adding on to them. We're not making a new government. We're just building on to the one we already have. You so sure? The states, still unsuspecting and not aware that they were passing the Rubicon, appointed members to the new convention for the sole and express purpose of revising and amending the Confederation. And probably not one man in 10,000 in the United States, till within these 10 or 12 days, had an idea that the old ship was to be destroyed and be put to the alternative of embarking in the new ship presented or of being left in danger of sinking. Yes, Hamilton said outright, I think it was in the Federalist Papers, it may have been in one of his other pennings, but he said outright, the states have to get on board or die. Comply or die. The states, I believe, universally supposed the convention would report alterations in the Confederation, which would pass an examination in Congress, and after being agreed to there, would be confirmed by all the legislatures or be rejected. Virginia made a very respectable appointment, and placed at the head of it the first man in America. In this appointment, there was a mixture of political characters, but Pennsylvania appointed principally those men who are esteemed aristocratical. Here, the favorite moment for changing the government was evidently discerned by a few men, who seized it with address. 10 other states appointed, and though they chose men principally connected with commerce and the judicial department, yet they appointed many good Republican characters. Had they all attended, we should now see, I am persuaded, a better system presented. The non-attendance of 8 or 9 men who were appointed members of the convention I shall ever consider as a very unfortunate event to the United States. Had they attended, I am pretty clear that the result of the convention would not have had that strong tendency to aristocracy now discernible in every part of the plan. There would not have been so great an accumulation of powers, especially as to the internal police of this country, in a few hands as the Constitution proposes to vest in them. The young visionary men and the consolidating aristocracy would have been more restrained than they had been. Young visionary men, who does that sound like? Hamilton, I think, was 18 when he was writing the Federalist Papers. Madison, I think he was in his 20s. And then the aristocratical, John Jay, in his much older ages, much older years, if I remember correctly. One of the few gentlemen that said, hey, not such a good idea for the states to have seceded from the crown. I wonder where his loyalties laid. 11 states met in the convention, and after 4 months close attention presented the new constitution to be good grief, I have to untie my tongue, to be adopted or rejected by the people. The uneasy and fickle part of the community may be prepared to receive any form of government, but I presume the enlightened and substantial part will give any constitution presented for their adoption a candid and thorough examination. We shall view the convention with proper respect, and at the same time that we reflect there were men of abilities and integrity in it, we must recollect how disproportionately the democratic and aristocratic parts of the community were represented. Perhaps the judicious friends and opposers of the new Constitution will agree that it is best to let it rely solely on its own merits or be condemned for its own defects. This subject of consolidating the states is new, and because 40 or 50 men have agreed in a system to suppose the good sense of this country and enlightened nation must adopt it without examination, and though in a state of profound peace, without endeavoring to amend those parts they perceive are defective, dangerous to freedom, and destructive of the valuable principles of republican government, is truly humiliating. It is true there may be danger in delay, but there is danger in adopting the system in its present form. Go ahead and highlight that. That is such an important principle. Sure, there might be danger in delay. There is even more danger in adopting a system. Because once it's installed, it's very difficult to overturn. And I see the danger in either case will arise principally from the conduct and views of two very unprincipled parties in the United States. Two fires between which the honest and substantial people have long found themselves situated. One party is composed of little insurgents, men in debt who want no law and who want a share of the property of others. Communists or protectionists. These are called revelers, shayettes, etc. The other party is composed of a few but more dangerous men with their servile dependents. These avariciously grasp at all power and property. You may discover in all the actions of these men an evident dislike to free and equal government, and they will go systematically to work to change, essentially, the forms of government in this country. These are called aristocrats, monarchists, etc. Between these two parties is the weight of the community, the men of middling property, men not in debt on the one hand, and men, on the other, content with republican governments, and not aiming at immense fortunes, offices, and power. In 1786, the little insurgents, the revelers, came forth, invaded the rights of others, and attempted to establish governments according to their wills. Their movements evidently gave encouragement to the other party, which in 1787 has taken the political field, and with its fashionable dependents and the tongue and the pen, is endeavoring to establish, in a great haste, a politer kind of government. These two parties, which will probably be opposed or united as it may suit their interests and views, are really insignificant compared with the solid, free, and independent part of the community. It is not my intention to suggest that either of these parties and the real friends of the proposed Constitution are the same men. The fact is, these aristocrats support and hasten the adoption of the proposed Constitution merely because they think it is a stepping stone to their favorite object. What adage does that sound like? Give an inch, they'll take a mile. I think I am well founded in this idea. I think the general politics of these men support it, as well as the common observation among them, that the proffered plan is the best that can be got at present. It will do for a few years and lead to something better. The sensible and judicious part of the community will carefully weigh all these circumstances. They will view the late convention as a respectable body of men. America probably never will see an assembly of men or a like number more respectable. But the members of the convention met without knowing the sentiments of one man in 10,000 in these states respecting the new ground taken. Their doings are but the first attempts in the most important scene ever opened. Though each individual in the state conventions will not, probably, be so respectable as each individual in the federal convention, yet as the state conventions will probably consist of 1,500 or 2,000 men of abilities and versed in the science of government, collected from all parts of the community and from all orders of men, it must be acknowledged that the weight of respectability will be in them. In them will be collected the solid sense and the real political character of the country. Being revisers of the subject, they will possess peculiar advantages. To say that these conventions ought not to attempt, coolly and deliberately, the revision of the system, or that they cannot amend it, is very foolish or very assuming. Signed, the Federal Farmer. So it was Mr. Patrick Henry Lee. I think some of these Anti-Federalist Papers are without name just because of that Federalist threat. It was a genuine one. It was like in the 1770s contesting the British crown. You had these two parties, both of which were vying for more governmental power, so if you gave your real name out there, there was a legitimate concern that you were going to be a target. that these mere innocent men of Republican virtue and value, principle, wouldn't show up on your doorstep and burn down your home and do whatever they pleased to your wife and kids. Do whatever they pleased to you. Anyway, that's all Mr. Patrick Henry Lee, had to say in number 37. If you have any questions about what he said in 37, maybe questions about what was said in the preceding papers, or if there's a legal topic you'd like me to cover in a future lecture, go ahead and post those down in the comments, because the entire point of the Calhoun School of Law is to provide you with the necessary skills and information to combat any sort of lawfare that will be waged against you, your loved ones, or your hard-earned property. So please, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and post them down in the comments. Excellent. So my name is Caleb Glick. I'm a lawyer here in the great state of Texas with the Calhoun School of Law to bring you a lot of information that plenty of bad folks would rather you not have. I hope you enjoyed this lecture, and if not, while you're down in the comments, go ahead and let me know how I can do better so I can best serve that purpose of helping you. I hope you'll have a wonderful day, and I'm not sure what the topic for the next lecture is going to be, but I'll do my best to make it as informative and entertaining as this one, if not more so. Regardless of the topic of the next lecture, until I see y'all then, I bid you all farewell.